Well, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. We have only 20 minutes,
Okay.
so let's start it. For the very few who don't really know this story, who were the Hollywood vampires?
Well, the original Hollywood vampires were a bunch of rock stars that got drunk every night at one certain bar called the Rainbow in L.A., and it was, Harry Nilsson and John Lennon and Keith Moon and myself and, all the guys that were in rock. Joe was a little bit after that. Joe did his time at the Rainbow a little bit after that. But what would happen was we, when all those bands broke up, most of them died. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, all those guys. And we all moved on. But we decided, why not put a band together and honor all of the dead, drunk friends? And that's what we do. So Joe and I and Johnny got together and said, okay, we're going to put a band together and honor those guys. So the songs that we'll do tomorrow night will be songs dedicated to all those guys.
One of the few original songs that we do it's probably one of the best written songs about that particular subject. I mean, when I hear that, it's so, because again, you lived it. You wrote the lyrics. You wrote, you lived that through that era, and are able to, whenever you write a song that's so close to your heart, because you did it. You actually were there. I love playing that song every night, because it is the images come to mind of what it was like. Because like Alice said, I have been there over the years at different times, and today, even before he passed away a short time ago, Lemmy from Motorhead, you could always find him at the bar at the Rainbow. It hasn't changed. There's a seat there. I bet you must have a little plaque where you used to sit. Where everybody used to have, Jimmy sat there, John sat there, and it's still a landmark, just like the Hollywood sign.
Tell me, please, how did you get involved in this Hollywood vampire story?
Well, that would have to start with me picking up a guitar when I was 12. But to make it long story short, actually, I was working on my autobiography, and literally a few feet away from where they were recording the record. And when I would get finished with my day's work, I would get a phone call, and it would be, "Hey, Joe, can you come down?" And again, having I knew about the Rainbow, and of course Alice and Johnny, and what was going on over there. And anytime there's creativity like that going on in a studio, and I've got my antennas out, and the phone would ring, and I said, "Okay, I'm down." And there's, because I'd want somebody to come play some guitar, and and before long I ended up being part of the scene, and it was, and Alice and I have known each other for years, and I've always wanted to work with him in the studio, and that alone was a something I never thought would come to pass, but it was great. And but that's how it happened anyway. I just kind of ended up being there every day, and with Johnny and Alice and different guys coming in. It was great.
Tell me, are you maybe thinking about writing a book about the vampires? I'm sure you could tell a lot of unbelievable stories.
Well, every night was like we'd sit there and go, if we can remember this, what just happened. Keith Moon was a book unto himself. Keith Moon was the best drummer in rock and roll, always has been, but also the most, he was the most insane. He was the most certifiably insane human being on the planet. I can tell you 50 stories. Joe can tell you at least that many. And everybody that knew Keith Moon could tell you a different story about a different night. We would sit there and wait, John and Harry and myself and a bunch of guys waiting for Keith to show up. And Keith would show up dressed like the Queen of England. And, full out. Or he would show up as Hitler. Or he would show up as a French maid. going a full drag. And everybody would just kind of like, oh, okay, you know. And you always expected him to do that because that was Keith, you know. Or if there was any sort of insane thing going on outside in the parking lot, you knew Keith was involved in it, you know. And that was just Keith. I mean, every night it was a bunch of guys sitting around, and it was the only time that these guys could sit and talk about music, or talk about what happened to them in Fargo, or talk about what happened to them in New York City or whatever. And everybody there totally understood what it was like to be on the road, what it was like to be in a band, what it was like to be in the studio, what Bob Dylan just did. You know, oh, I got a great story for you. You know, just telling stories. So it was a fun drinking club. And basically, I'm about the only functioning one left, you know. And I think it was up to me I was destined to put this band together to honor the other ones. Well, the book would be funny, you know. The album is kind of a little book about it, you know. With the first song, Raise the Dead, is kind of saying, look, these guys ran in a fast pace, and they burned themselves out, but the music still stays. You know, even though the body dies, the music stays alive. And it does. And it's kind of our job to keep the fire going.
As with any art, after you go back into history, I mean, some of the most famous artists passed away before they were recognized. But we go and we see their paintings or read their books. Of course, recording really just the last century didn't become an art form, so to speak. But we bring it to life, and especially when we play it live, because that's the one thing. I mean, you can listen to a CD or an MP3 or whatever, but when you actually play it live, you're paying homage and making this art form become alive again. And so, you think about these artists that are passing away for whatever reason. They're still alive, and they're still out there. And when we started talking about this and doing interviews and hearing how we were all thinking about this, we're actually realizing how immortal the music that we make is. And hopefully down the road in 50 years, people will be talking about these guys that were kind of could have been considered out of their minds on some levels, but also incredibly creative, and did things that no one had done before or will ever do again.
You are a true rock and roll legend, but tell me, how great was it for you to work with Sir Paul McCartney?
I think that was one of the days that I call it the real. I mean, he was. As with all the Beatles, I mean, the great ego leveler. I mean, no matter who walks in there, how you feel about yourself, as your ego or where you stand, and you kind of, hey, it's just human nature. I mean, whether you're a bunch of mechanics and you go in and you show off your car, your latest hot rod or whatever, you've got ego is involved, especially all alpha males. I mean, we all have something to strut our stuff. But when Paul McCartney walks in, all of a sudden, it's like we looked at each other. There was one point I remember Paul was just doing his thing, as calm as could be, and me and Johnny and Alice was standing there like kind of shoulder to shoulder, going, I can't. We didn't say anything. There were no words, but we were just shaking our heads, going, "I can't believe this is happening." I mean, that was how I felt. I mean, I think that Alice, you can probably add to that.
He sits down at the piano, and it's like he's in the band, and he is at that point. And he looks around. And he goes, "Okay, I wrote this song for Badfinger. Joe, take the lead on this. Alice, sing the middle part. Johnny, play the rhythm on this like this," and then he turns around and we all go, And we're all like little kids, you know, that's Santa Claus. Because he's not just a Beatle, he's the Beatle. He was probably the most creative force in the Beatles. Him and John, of course. John's not with us anymore, so, you know, there he is. And I mean, you know, that's a one of a kind right there. That's the ultra, right? And all of us feel that way. I think anybody in any band suddenly comes down, bows their head a little bit because he's the man. You know?
Well put. Well put. I mean, we all had those thoughts, and the way he was, and there were certain other people in the room. I don't know how they felt about it, but we were, you know, we certainly, because we've talked about it, you know, again, the three of us, but you know, there are other people in the room that we were a little surprised at the way they handled themselves in that situation, and we've had a few laughs about that. But again, we're the ones sitting here talking, and all I can say is, for the three of us, it was a truly amazing experience.
It's one thing to know Paul McCartney. We've all known the Beatles for a long time, you know, all the Beatles. They were all great guys. They were all really great guys. But to be in the studio is a different animal. Then you're actually on record with that guy. You better hold your own. You better be able to sing that part, because he'll look back at you like, you know, hit the notes, you know. But he never did. I mean, everybody played. We did, I think, the track in 3 takes, and we did it live. And it was a band, sounded like a band that had been played together for 10 years, and it was like 5 minutes. He was suddenly in the band, and every time I see him now, he goes, "Am I still a vampire?" And I go, "I smell blood."
Tell me, Hollywood Vampires, is it a project or a real band now?
Well, it's a real band because of the fact that we've already done live gigs all over the world. You know, we've done LA, we've done Rock in Rio, we've played Portugal. Now we're playing all over Europe, all over the United States. It's a band, and it's not like, and this is what we do. We did the Grammys. You know, Joe's in Aerosmith. I'm in Alice Cooper. Robert DeLeo's in Stone Temple Pilots. Everybody's, you know, Matt was Guns N' Roses. So we've all done this in front of thousands of people every night for the last 40 years. It's nothing new. It's just a different lineup. It's a different lineup of guys, and when you do that, you're going to create a different sound. Like if it were 4 different guys up there, it would be a different version of those songs. But we play it the way we would play it. And so you're never going to get somebody that's going to sound exactly like these guys. You know. So it's our version of those songs. And yeah, it's a band. You know, when we get together as a band.
Without a doubt. And actually that's something that probably was one of the hardest things to get together, was this scheduling, because these you know, it was Johnny and Alice were working on the movie and writing some songs and forming this nucleus, and then when they were recording, there was no plan like to go out on the road for X amount of months or years or days or whatever. It just took one day at a time, and I really don't know. I mean, I'd like to think that the three of us could get together at least for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of gigs at some point or other. But as what happened, I mean, the first gigs we did were with Duff on bass, and he went off with Guns N' Roses. So, as from that point of view, I mean, does it mean we can't go out and play if this lineup can't all show up? I don't know. Well, that answer will happen, I think, when we get farther down the road. But right now, we've got to, I mean, after the gigs we've done here, every night's been better, and we're looking forward to about 5 weeks of shows in the States, and we'll see, you know.
And the funny thing about it is, and I've been in a lot of bands, you've been in a lot of bands, when you get that many guys that, again, you talked about being alpha males, there's got to be one guy that is the chef. The guy. There is no one guy that's the chef in this band. You've got 5 or 6 chefs in there, and I've never heard one argument. I've never heard one person go, well, we got to do this. It's always been, what if we do this? And the other guy goes, okay, let's try that. Or why don't we try this? Well, okay, but let's try this too. Never once has anybody walked out of a rehearsal angry, or out of a recording session angry, or on stage angry. That's pretty amazing when you get 5 guys that are used to running the show all put together, and all of a sudden it's just kind of, we look at each other and go, there's no reason for any one of us to pull rank on anyone, because neither one of us, we don't have any sort of up on anyone. We're all the same. So I just kind of go, well, let's try it, and if it works, it works, but we all know if it works or not. That's the main thing, is that when you play a song through, we'll look at each other and go, ah. Or we'll play a song through and go, yeah, that really works. So there's nobody ever telling anybody what to do. No,
I think we've all paid our dues to get to get into that studio. Those recording sessions, or everybody has already spent their time in front of a camera lens, like Johnny, because what he does, he entertains people on a mass scale. So that's an incredible thing that I can't relate to on one level, but on another level, it's not much different than what we do when we go out on stage. And he does play a lot more than you would think. I mean, he plays all around LA. He's jammed with Alice. He's jammed with me in my band, and we've recorded together. So he's got a lot more music and more experience on stage with a guitar in his hands than most people would realize. So he's earned his spot just because of that alone. I mean, and he's a great player, and he thinks music, he talks music. You go to his house, most of the people hanging out there are musicians, and it's that's the glue. And like Alice said, I mean, between just him, I mean, God, for 45 years in a band for me, Alice, I don't know, 40, whatever. I mean, just the two of us together, 80, 90 years together of being out there on stage, trying to make it right, And I think we've kind of earned our space there, And Johnny, he gets out there, man, and I look at him, and all I can do is smile, because I know he's having the best time of his life, and the audience is just giving it back.
Yeah, what's funny is you go to Johnny's house, and like you said, and I've never seen another actor there. I've only seen musicians. I see Marilyn Manson comes over, or like you said, McCartney will come over, or Joe Walsh, or anybody like that. Every time you walk in, it's rock guys. I've never walked in and seen, Brad Pitt. It's always music, because music is more important to him than I think anything. He says, he would rather be on stage playing rock and roll. He said, but acting is a different world, and it's a different life for him. But what happens in music is you get immediate response. You don't have to do a movie and sit and wait and see if people are going to like it. You're on stage, you finish the song, and you want to hear the audience react to it. So it's an immediate response.